Default Notion trigger in n8n uses polling, which is slow and inefficient. I'll show you how to use Notion webhooks instead. They tell n8n exactly when the workflow should start. Let me show you the old way first, because it makes the problem more obvious. This is a default built-in Notion trigger. Most people reach for this when building their Notion workflows. You pick a database and tell n8n how often to check it. It's acceptable for certain automations, but it's far from elegant and efficient. Every interval, n8n wakes up, checks Notion, and asks if anything changed. Most of the times, nothing changed and you just wasted resources, executions. And even if something did change, you have to wait until the next loop it syncs and updates. The moment you want your automations to feel instant, polling becomes slow and sluggish, and that's exactly what we want to fix. Webhooks flip all of this around. Instead of n8n asking Notion over and over again, Notion tells n8n when the workflow should run. So let's build that. Quick 45 seconds about what a webhook actually is, because if you have avoided them until now, they can seem more complicated than they actually are. A webhook is just a message from one app to another. That's it. Notion says, hey, this page just changed, you need to do something. You can think of it like a doorbell. n8n is the house, and your workflow is a person inside the house. Now, instead of that person going to the door every 2 minutes to check if someone is outside, it just does its own thing and waits until it hears a doorbell, and only then goes out to check. Then it's sure that someone is out there. And if you have a lot of workflows or persons inside the house, they stop queuing and bumping into each other just to check if anyone is outside the door. And the doorbell can have different chimes or melodies for each workflow, so that each person knows which chime they need to respond to and nothing else. That's the whole idea. Now let's continue setting it up. We will start on the Notion side. Some tutorials show you how to connect Notion to n8n through integrations, and it's an important step, but it's not required for webhooks. If you do want to do something with pages inside Notion after the workflow is triggered, it is actually required. But if you only want to start the workflow, you don't need to set up these integrations. Since doing something with Notion pages is usually the use case, I'll show you quickly how to do that so that you don't bump into weird errors when you actually run your workflow. To find your connections menu in Notion, you need to open your app, either desktop or web, find your workspace and click Settings. Then on the left, you need to find Connections tab and click Go to Developer Portal to open the page. You have a short link for creating a connection here. You can also find it on the left, Connections tab. Click New Connection, give it a name. Access token is fine. You need to select the workspace, click Create Connection, and you can choose what capabilities n8n will have within Notion. You can add reading and inserting comments. Then important step is not to forget giving access to specific pages, because setting the integration alone is not enough. You need to click Edit Access and select which specific pages you will give access to. Then you click Save, go back to Configuration, copy your access token, and head over to n8n. In your n8n instance, you open Credentials tab, click Create Credential, type Notion, select Notion API and continue. You paste your secret, give it a name, and click Save. It tests the connection automatically. You can close this, and you can verify it from Notion side by opening the page you gave access to within the integration. You go to upper right corner, click three dots, find Connections section, and check if your new integration is there. If it's not, you need to open the settings again and make sure you didn't miss a step. Okay, that's the plumbing. Now we can continue to the actual webhook part. We are going to add automation inside the database itself. You can find Notion automations on the little lightning bolt that's called automations. This is where Notion lets you say, when something happens inside this database, you send a webhook out. So I'll set the trigger. Let's say when status of the page becomes demo, we trigger an action and we select send webhook. Now it asks us for a URL, which is a chime from my previous example. To get that, we need to head over to n8n and fetch that. Over in n8n, we start a new workflow, and instead of taking Notion trigger, we select webhook trigger. This is the node that sits there and listens, and it's not specific to Notion. It can work with any app. When we open webhook node, we can see we can get two URLs, test URL and production URL. We can use test URL when we are still building the workflow or testing, and we want to make sure that some action in another app doesn't accidentally trigger the workflow while it's still being built. Since we are doing exactly that, I'll copy test URL and click listen for a webhook, which allows n8n to receive that webhook. I also need to select post method, and then I can go back to Notion to paste that URL in. I can quickly test it by creating a new entry and moving it to this status that we selected as the trigger. And we can see that within a couple seconds, the workflow was triggered and we received some data about who triggered the workflow. If you want to get a bit more fancy, we can build upon this update database page. This is the part that requires integration and connection. We choose database page, update, and here we can select by ID, expression, and we find object page ID. We drag that onto database page ID. We can select one of the properties, for example, schedule status, and we set it to be OK. And we'll see what happens. Now we can also update it to production URL. So we open webhook node, copy production URL, and publish the workflow. Now we go back to Notion. We update our webhook URL to a new one, production one. Click OK. We create a new page and we move that to demo state, and we wait for a couple seconds to see what happens. And you can see the status was updated to OK. So this is now a two-way communication without any delay, without any polling. It happens almost instantaneously. Before we do anything useful with it, there's one thing that most tutorials skip, which is security. Once you publish your workflow and use production URL, it's open to anyone who has that URL. It may not seem likely that someone finds out what exactly it is, but I prefer to build it properly to make sure that some bot can't scrape the URL and then start exploiting my environment. The simplest solid option is header authentication. You set a secret, basically a password, and n8n will ignore any request that doesn't send it. Over in n8n, in webhook settings, we see an authentication setting, and we can select header auth, select name and value. This can be how you name it is up to you, and I can select value as password, but normally you would use some long combination of symbols to make sure it's safe, and click save. Now you need to set it up on Notion side. For that, we go back to Notion, we open our automation, and we have a section for add custom header, and here we insert the same values and we click done. Now we are sure that Notion is sending the webhook with authentication credentials, and n8n only listens to webhook events that carry this authentication credential. So it's the same doorbell, but now it only works for people who have the right fingerprint. It takes a couple minutes and now you can sleep with a peace of mind. Just make sure you treat the secret as a password. Alright, so we have got Notion messaging n8n instantly and securely. On its own, it's not very useful just yet. Let me show you my own system that I'm using to manage content. I've got a Notion board where my content moves across different stages of the pipeline. Let me show you how it works. I create a quick tweet, write my ideas, review it, and set it as approved. If you are asking why I didn't just post it on X, it's because this allows me to schedule my posts in a way I have planned in advance, and I don't even have to touch any scheduling software. The automation kicks in behind the scenes, schedules the posts, changes the status, and sends me feedback. This is just a small piece of automation within my content management system, and if you're interested in seeing more about it, let me know. So this isn't really about webhooks. It's about Notion becoming the surface for every automations that run in the background. You can swap my example with whatever you do. For example, client finishes onboarding, it automatically gets access to new resources and gets a personalized email all within seconds and without you touching it. It's all the same pattern and you get feedback about what's happening instantly. The old way makes n8n sit there repeating the same steps over and over on a timer. This way, Notion just notifies n8n when exactly it should run the workflow. I kept this setup to a minimum just to show you a concept, but there's so much more you can do and automate. I'll probably do a follow-up with more advanced stuff if that's useful. If I forgot something important or you would do it differently, definitely let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.